Now we are going to look at the following functionality. Suppose we want to have this new functionality to get all the books in the library. We want the user interface wants to list uh, the information about all of the books in the library. So it says, get me the books. It sends a request to the library. What should the library do? If it sends an iterator to all the books, UI can, in theory, take each book and do something with those books. It could probably set the fields as it pleases, and then the integrity of the data would be compromised. So we don't want to send back the references to books through an iterator or as a list or whatever. So what we are going to do is actually send back, return an iterator to a result. So what we are going to send back are result objects. This UI gets a iterator to a result. So as it iterates, it gets result for book 1, result for book 2, the fields for book 3, etc., etc. So each result object will contain the necessary fields for a corresponding book. So what we are going to do is, this library is getting each book object through an iterator, and then constructing a corresponding result object and sending it back. So it is actually sending an iterator to a result object. So that is what we will do. Let's see how that can be accomplished. So how is this carried out? We are going to create an object of a certain class that ultimately gives us an iterator to a result. So the name of the class is safe iterator, and what it is actually is an implementation of this iterator. You know that iterator can be of different types. You can have iterator to member, you can have iterator to book, you can have iterator to result, and this is actually an iterator to a result. So it implements the interface iterator. The name of the class itself is safe iterator. Now, what does it do? If you are wanting books, it maintains an iterator to books. So it has access to all the books. So it can iterate through each one of these. And what it will do is it will look at the first one and copy that to a result object and give it to the library. So the library is actually providing the UI with a reference to this object, the iterator to the result. So the safe iterator, which is actually implementing this iterator result, is the one that is actually supplied to the UI. So if you look at this class, it will have has next, it will have next. So when you call next on this, it will give you a result object. And how does it get that result object? It iterates through this iterator of books. So when you call the next of safe iterator, it is going to call the next of iterator book, which it is maintaining. And then it will get a book object. It will copy the relevant fields to the result. And that is what will be returned to the UI. So when the UI calls next on this, it gets a result. Then it calls next time. This will go to the next book object, pull all that stuff, and then copy it and give it back. So conceptually, it is very simple, but the implementation is a little involved. So let's go to the Java code and see how it works. So suppose you call the library's books method. So this is actually we are talking about the library method. This is the library class. So it has the method get books, which is added functionality, which is not in the design or in the analysis stage. I just put this to give you some extra information. So get books is going to return an iterator to result objects. What does it do? It creates a safe iterator, which is implementing safe iterator is implementing iterator result. So let's take a look at that. Safe iterator implements iterator result. So if you create a safe iterator, it will be of type iterator result. But when you create a safe iterator, you have to say what kind of iterator you want. Do you want to use books or do you want to use members? So it is actually a generic class. So you put the generic parameter here. This can either be book or member. You can put other things too, but then it will crash. And the constructor of safe iterator requires an iterator for the type that you put here. If you put book here, you need to give something that iterates on books. So catalog has an iterator for books. So catalog.iterator is just fine. And the second parameter should be safe iterator.book if you put book here. If you put member here, this should be safe iterator.member. What is the need for that? What is it doing? That is where things get tricky. So safe iterator is here. The constructor of safe iterator takes in an iterator to the type that you specified at creation time. When you created the safe iterator, you said whether it is book or member. So the iterator has to be of that type. The second parameter is of type. What is type? Type is an abstract class inside safe iterator, and it is implemented by safe book and safe member. Actually, this could be called just about anything under the sun. And what is important is that safe book copies a book object, whereas safe member copies a member object. Now, let's take a step back and look at the implementation of safe iterator. It has to implement has next. It has to implement next. Let's take a look at has next. The class safe iterator has been given an iterator to book or members. Let's focus on books for the moment. So given a book iterator, it stores that iterator here. You can see that code in the constructor, right? So that iterator to book has been stored. So if that iterator doesn't have any more books, this iterator doesn't have any more results. For each book, we are giving one result. If there are no more books, no more results. On the other hand, if you are calling next, it checks if iterator has anything. If there is an element, you will give a result object here through this copy. If there is nothing left, you are throwing an exception, and that is what the iterator interface specifies, that if you are called here with no no members remaining, rather no elements remaining, no objects remaining to be shown, you throw an exception. So let's focus on the situation where we have a book object. We assume that iterator is on books. What we do is we use type. What is type? If you are passed a, if this was a book, if T was book, the second parameter to the constructor would be, the type object would be safe iterator dot book. So it would be a safe book object. Book is of type safe book. So we have a safe book object. So when you look at this, you see that this is a safe book object. It will execute the copy method of safe book by dynamic binding. So it will go to this method copy. Copy is an abstract method in type. So no matter what the type is, book or member, it will have the copy method. So we are calling the copy method with a result object and another object. So we are calling the copy method on the book object if you have a book, and we are passing the result object and the next book object that we get through iterator.next. That comes in as an object here, and we know that it would be a book. If it is not a book, that is a crash. So if the library made a mistake by passing in a member, for example, this would not, it would not be a book and it would be a crash here. Otherwise, we have a book object here in book. This is the result. You tell the result to set all the book fields using this book object, and then we return that result. So the next will return the result. So this can be used for returning a list of books as an iterator to a sequence of result objects, or can also be used for members. Again, they come as result objects. So this can be used for renewing books. If you look at the user interface for renewing books, let's see where it is. It may be down. It's a little complicated. So let's see where it is. Yeah, here it is. Renew books. Given a member ID, it searches for the membership, and it gets the list of all books that are issued to the member. So the library has a method called get books with a parameter of type request. If that is the case, it gets all the books for all the books that are issued to this member. There is also a get books method, as you have seen, without parameters, that gets you all the books. Of course, all as iterator to result. So you get an iterator to result, and you know how that is now realized. You iterate through this issued books and take each book, each result, and then prompt the user whether this should be renewed or not. And if the user says yes, you call the renew book method of library, which is fairly simple. It checks for holds and then stuff like that. And then if it is operation completed, you print a message, otherwise you print an error message. And you can see that there is also a get all the members. You can also get all the members using a similar technique. here. We have seen how books are retrieved. This is very similar code, get members.